Welcome into a game day edition of Gorilla Sports Off Ice, powered by Trusted American. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. Go to trustedamerican.com to see how much they can save you today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into Gorilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Megan Aingley, joined by Jesse Montano, and in a little bit here, we will also have a very special guest and familiar face to any and all Avs fans. Peter Baugh will be joining us to talk about the New York Rangers. He now covers a lot of the New York teams and the New Jersey Devils also a little bit, but he'll help us to preview the matchup ahead of tonight, Avs versus New York Rangers. But before we get to that, we have a little bit of housekeeping to do because a lot of information came out of yesterday's practice. And it's just kind of bringing people up to speed with some call-ups, some transactions, and some injury news generally. So off the top, Jason Polin recalled from the Colorado Eagles, kind of in place of Ty Felliber. Jure Anala stays up with the team. So just wanted to talk briefly about Jason Polin finally getting the call-up opportunity. He missed about a month of the AHL season from mid-November to mid-December with a lower body injury. And so when we saw like a Nikita Prishapov get in some games with the Avs, there was a time where Pavel and Polin were injured for the Eagles. And so this is a player that I think the Avs had significant interest in seeing sooner in the year, but injury held him back a little bit. And he comes up on the heels of what was an incredible weekend for the Eagles. They swept the top team in the American League. And Jason Polin had a power play breakaway goal in the 7-2 win over Calgary on Saturday. So I think in seeing the shutout against Winnipeg and Jason Polin, who's been pretty hot for the Eagles lately, they just want to get a different look on that fourth line possibly and see if he can inject maybe some scoring skill into the lineup.
He's scoring tonight. You heard it here first from Megan Aingley. No, look, this is a player that you've been talking about this season in terms of, man, if he wasn't hurt, we'd probably be seeing Jason Polin already. I mean, I believe this will be the 26th forward used by the Avalanche tonight. And truthfully, if it wasn't for those injuries, like you were just mentioning for Polin earlier in the year, we probably would have already seen him, right? This is a player who came up to the NHL last year. I thought played some good games. Not great, good. Trustworthy, loud in the bottom part of the lineup there. Physical, plays with some skill, plays with some speed. I like to see guys rewarded for hard work. You have to work pretty hard, come back from an injury to work your way back into a call-up. When the Avs have found a few guys who they have liked what they've gotten, Jason Polin worked his way into this call-up. And, we chatted with him this morning, and the first thing that he mentioned was keep my details sharp, keep the work ethic going, try to contribute where I can. And I think that's a mindset that he needs to have.
In college, he was tied for goals with Fantilli. And so people had a goal scoring expectation of him when he made the transition to the pro level. And it didn't immediately translate for him. And funnily enough, he had yet to score in the American League, gets called up to the NHL and scores in his NHL debut ahead of a goal in the American League. But I think he started to figure out that part of his game a little better this year, save for missing some time due to the injury. But it's the hard-nosed part of his game that I think the Avs have fallen in love with more than anything. The goal scoring, it still feels like a part of his game that's yet to come, even at the pro level, but it's getting there more than it was. But I do think the word details that he used and you make mention of is the biggest part of Jason Polin's game. And he plays a pretty hard-fought game, and I think that's a lot of what they're looking for in the fourth line.
Well, and the other thing that I think makes a difference is this is not a young player. This is a 90s baby here. Played 3 years major junior, played all 4 years at college before, even making his pro debut. So this isn't necessarily a player that you dream on, or like you said, oh, maybe he'll break out into a score. No, we've probably got a pretty good idea of what Jason Pullen is at this level. And it's a player who can be effective, and it's a player who can have an impact. To your point, he had the goal scoring touch in his college career. So that's not to say that he can't, start to fill the net again, but that's not why the Avs have him here. That's not what the Avs need from him tonight. They need him to come out and do the things that have made him successful at the American League level, skating hard, working hard, winning battles, being physical, and just kind of being a pest to play against on the bottom line.
Yeah, kind of deceptive in the heavy physical game that he can play. Not the biggest frame, but that's something to think about.
He is, like, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, though, because he had taken his skates off when we were talking to him, he's got like some decent size to him. He's not a small guy.
He does. Someone who surprises me for their physicality is Steinberg, because he's long, but he's thin.
Yeah.
Poland has a little more heft to him, but both players that play kind of a different style of a physical game. But a heavy player, Jason Poland, that rookie tournament, he laid a huge hit.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he missed some time due to injury. I think he's figuring out how to throw the body around responsibly. And so interestingly, Ivan is the player that is returned to health, but has been reassigned to the Eagles. And I think people have wondered if it's the last we'll see of Ivan, what's going on there. And I think it's just because he hasn't played in 18 days.
Right.
They want to get him in some games. Eagles are playing tonight and tomorrow. Get him back in some game action because he is still a young player in his pro season. He's waiver exempt, so a conditioning stint isn't necessary. They can just get him in Eagles games as they see fit. And depending on how they feel about Jason Poland, I could see Ivan returning back with the Avs at a later date. But hopefully we're looking at some more return to health for a few players moving forward.
Yeah, his last game, Ivan's last game, was December 27th. So he actually hasn't played in the new year. And I do think that there is a little bit with this where everyone needs to remember this is a young player who we were not expecting to be a lineup regular every single night when we were going into training camp. So combine all that with the fact that, to your point, he's been out for 18 days. He's just started to get that, the red jersey back in practices, things like that. I actually think it makes a lot of sense for him to go down to the Eagles and look like if Ivan's a player that we've seen this year and that we're coming to expect. He'll go down there, kind of take care of business a little bit, look like a clear standout, and he'll be right back up with the big club. But I was definitely a little bit surprised. It was right as we were ending the show with Nicole Hensley yesterday that we got the news that he had been reassigned. So we'll keep an eye on it. I don't expect, assuming Ivan continues to roll along the way that he has, I don't expect him to be gone for long.
5 goals, 3 assists in 37 games. I think that's another part of it. His game has grown very quiet. I think getting him in some American League games and hopefully getting a little bit of that points getting touch back will build some confidence. That is really important for such a young player. And it's a 6-game homestand for the Eagles right now. So there's lots of opportunity for him to get in a handful of games here pretty easily and just be arm's length away down the hockey highway.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. I think it makes a lot of sense for Ivan. And again, to me, this is almost even a little bit of a measuring stick of, okay, you've spent half the season with the NHL club. Are you going to carry those things over into what you did at the AHL level? And again, like I said, really kind of dominate, because that's my expectation for him.
This is an exciting one. Scott Wedgwood.
Yeah.
Just 12 days after the January 2nd Buffalo game, backing up Mackenzie Blackwood tonight. What do you make of that recovery time for him?
Well, what was your thought when you first saw the injury? What did you think it was?
Ankle sprain.
Oh, see, I thought Achilles. Just based on the way he reacted and reached. And then, no weight on the leg as he was going off. So to me, my worst case was like, a ruptured Achilles or something like that. And then my second was high ankle sprain. I think the fact that, and not only ankle, but just given the way that it was Zach Benson, right? Fell on him. You also had to worry a little bit knee.
Definitely.
That wasn't where
funky.
Right. That wasn't where Wedgwood, reached necessarily, but when you saw that replay, it's like, oh, your knee's not supposed to bend that way. The fact that he's back on the ice, but back in the lineup for tonight, backing up, full participant. We see him on the ice today. One, you have to be incredibly relieved that it wasn't any worse. And two, I think you're just excited with what Scott Wedgwood has brought to the team aside from his play, which has been very good. It would have just been such a bummer to lose out on that for the rest of the year, assuming if it had been like kind of worst case scenario, right?
Right.
And then you suddenly feel way worse about the deal and giving up Annunen and all of that. So I think you are as relieved and as happy as you could be.
Absolutely. I think they ruled out high ankle sprain shortly after it happened, so thankfully there was some optimism there. But in the same way that Lehkonen doesn't like to wear the red no contact jersey, you didn't see Scott Wedgwood walking around in any sort of brace, boot.
Yep.
He was really trying to rehabilitate as quickly, though responsibly, as possible. So it's great to see him make a return so soon. But in a bit of bad news, Val Nichushkin, originally on this day-to-day timeline, but Bednar started with 7 to 10 days up front. We're around day 14, but Bednar recently said yesterday, probably a ways to go for Val Nichushkin. Things were going good. He went on the ice a couple times, didn't feel great, so they're backing off a little bit to build things up again for Nichushkin. So I still think we're on the doorstep of being able to call this a close-ish return, but it's not as close as we thought previously.
And I believe he was skating again this morning, I think is what I heard before I was there. I didn't see him out there. But we did see Val Nichushkin. He looks to be in good spirits. Chatted with Mark, real kind of briefly. Yeah, I don't know. Availability, aside from everything else, aside from all the playoff stuff, is starting to feel like a little bit of you are going to have to live with this with Val Nichushkin. He does seem to get dinged up a little bit more often than maybe you'd like. And the recovery times do seem to be, he seems like someone who, and I respect this because this is how you avoid making things worse. He seems to be someone who is overly cautious with getting that, return to play. Want to make sure that I am fully dialed in, feeling as good as I can before I'm going to green light. Obviously, I'm sure if it was playoffs or something like that, or you really needed the game, if he's getting close, he'll go. But this to me just feels like another situation. Cale Makar does this a little bit too, where it's like, I'm going to wait till I feel 100%. I don't want to be feeling uncomfortable. I don't want to be thinking about if something's hurting or doesn't feel right, whatever. But yeah, it does just feel like the occasional 2 to 3 weeks is something that you might have to live with Val Nichushkin.
I think this team has embraced an abundance of caution with all of the injuries this year too. So it's great to see he definitely was on the ice yesterday, kind of ahead of practice in the no contact jersey with players like Miles Wood and Oliver Shillington, Sam Girard and Josh Manson. And so players like Miles Wood getting on the ice has even been nice to see because his timeline was in the month-to-month range. Still feels like a player that has a ways to go, but it is still very encouraging to see Miles Wood on the ice now a little bit.
Is it though? Is it?
You don't want him to come back?
I just
That's so funny.
And I'm willing to give a full benefit of the doubt that he was playing through an injury at the beginning of the year. But Megan, like Miles Wood has struggled in the games that he has played for the Avs this season. As you are looking around this roster, Gabe Landeskog's on the ice again today, dropping to one knee to take one-timers and has definitely got more zip in his step. I don't fully know if I'm ready to say he's on, he's on the doorstep and da-da-da-da-da. with every passing day, I'm feeling more and more like it'll be playoffs, but you're up against it cap wise. And to me, Miles Wood, given the way that he's played, is a candidate to be moved. Unless he can come back into the lineup and really show strides of not only getting back and getting healthy, but looking better than he did in the games that we've seen him play this year. He's looked kind of lost. Hasn't really looked like the systems have, he's gotten a firm grasp on him. And he kind of was working his way down the lineup as his line mates from last year were working their way up. So again, it's obviously encouraging to see him out there because that means he's getting healthy and he's getting better. But I do just look at this as a guy that if he comes back, I do think the Avs need to probably look at in terms of moving on and seeing if you can get anything for that. It's an interesting contract. It's not a high dollar figure, but it does have a lot of term on it. I don't know what the appetite is around the league for that.
I think it's too high for what he is, at least what he appears to be this year. And I didn't mean for this to be a dunk on Miles Wood segment.
No.
But I even think back to training camp where Bednar was talking about preseason performances and guys who looked like they took care of themselves over the offseason and came prepared for the year ahead. And he omitted Miles Wood's name, I remember. And there's just this reading between the lines of feeling Bednar was not happy with the version of Miles Wood that came at the start of camp. Whether that's injury or conditioning, has not really been answered. But obviously the play that followed definitely pointed to injury. He's injured now. That all makes sense. But I do think that is the part of the puzzle, to your point, that wouldn't fit when he returns. But he should return. It's easier to trade a healthy player who strings together some good games, because I don't think the dollar amount makes sense for the puzzle now that they've decided to commit more to goaltending than ever before.
Right.
They're going to have to sacrifice then parts of the lineup, starting with the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm. And going back to, at the beginning of the year, what you're talking about with Jared Bednar, I also remember it being striking. And Miles Wood didn't say like, oh man, I don't know, I'm lost here. But I remember we talked to him on one of the first few days and he was like, yeah, you got to get ramped back up and, getting back into, the pace. And that's true for everybody. That is not unique, to Miles Wood. But I just remember it being a little striking because I then talked to Ross Colton and it was, I'm really excited.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so much more comfortable. I have such a better grasp of the system. I feel better with all the guys in the room. I feel like I've got some chemistry going. And then to your point, the way those seasons started was just, it matched, I felt, what we heard from the two players. This is one player who is clearly a year later, much more comfortable, understands his assignment, understands his role, and also sees opportunity in the lineup to make a larger impact. And again, I don't know, Miles Wood away from the rink. We're not like best friends with him. So I don't know. And I don't want to be accusing him of not taking, the summer seriously or not getting ready or not, feeling prepared enough on the systems. But your point about the comments from Jared Bednar combined with the difference between what we heard from Ross Colton and Miles Wood, combined with what we saw on the ice, to me, there's some not very difficult math that is starting to work itself out here.
That's the best way to say it. I feel bad for this dunk on Miles Wood segment. We'll transition to
especially because he's hurt. Like he could come back and look completely
We're piling on. I know.
Right. But
and he needs to.
Well, right. He does.
So the excuse was, all right, he was hurt. That's why he played badly.
Right. And the unfortunate part of the business side of professional sports is it is, in the truest sense, a what have you done for me lately business. And what Miles Wood has done for the Avs lately, well, it's not anything because he's been hurt. But before that, it was not very good. And it's just being realistic. I don't think we're trying to, I don't think that we're dunking on Miles Wood. I don't think we're trying to bury the guy. You and I are taking a step back, looking at the construction of this roster, looking at his money combined with what we've seen on the ice from when he has been healthy this year. And like I said, the math isn't adding up there, and something's got to give either in terms of them moving on from that money or him playing up to that value very quickly.
I think Kiviranta and Parker Kelly having the year that they've had has also played into why, no matter what Miles Wood does, this conversation has changed greatly around him.
And really the reason that we're putting so much emphasis on Miles Wood is we are getting close to trade deadline. You are, again, we're seeing Gabe Landeskog more and more frequently. Jared Bednar pushes back yesterday on the reports of the knee swelling. So you're just sitting there and you're having to start asking these types of questions as it relates to roster construction. And I think you make an excellent point of, we're in a different situation than we were in at the beginning of the year. The Avs have decided to commit more money to goaltending out of necessity. So you do have to start, even more closely looking at all the dollars and cents. And while we're talking about a guy like Miles Wood working his way back, you do have to start having that conversation because he is an LTIR player right now, meaning that you don't have to worry about his money. But if that changes, it's a different conversation.
Great segue for Landeskog briefly. Yesterday at practice, Bednar denied the reports. He said there's no truth to the reports that Landeskog couldn't skate consecutive days because his knee started to swell. And we see him back again at morning skate with the Avs this morning, a lively skate with the game. So I kind of wanted to hear your perspective on what you saw from Landeskog this morning.
So it's so hard because we've done this so many times, not us, but just like in general, where we've assessed what we see with Gabe. And then we don't see him for an extended period of time or whatever.
This is what, 3 back-to-back morning skates?
Yes.
And they went on the road briefly.
But here's what I was going to say, Megan. I think today's the best I've seen him look. And what I base that on is 2 things. 1, pop. He can accelerate. He can get up to speed. I posted a video on my Twitter account of him running through a drill, coming around, and I mean really picking up speed and getting up ice. So that's 1. And 2 is what I refer to as reactionary movements. Makes a pass and it gets deflected. It comes back in his feet, and he's corralling those pucks. He's changing direction quickly, not based on what a trainer or team doctor is telling him to do out there with intentional movements. No, he's taking part in drills. And if a puck deflects, if a rebound pops out, if the play changes direction, he's pacing with all of that in real time. And he's making sharp cuts, hard movements. I believe Arif Dean got a video of it. He was doing a 2-on-1 drill, and the pass kind of came in his wheelhouse, and he dropped to one knee and ripped a one-timer.
I have a video of it.
Do you?
I was going to talk about it. It's the tail end, but you see he's dropped to one knee going for the one-timer.
Yep.
And that's the difference I see is when I use the word lively is he's trying bold things.
Yes.
He's laughing at himself, and he's getting the reaction of his teammates too. They're cheering him on. They're egging him on. And that was maybe the difference in what I saw today compared to other times.
Well, and he on his left foot, I want to make sure it's clear, he was cutting across the middle of the ice, and because his right knee is the knee, and he was playing off of his left leg. His right leg wasn't on, and he fell.
Yes.
He took like a weird tumble. You saw his skate catch an edge, and he kind of tumbled a little bit. And all of us in the media were like, and he pops right back up, and he's laughing, and the trainers are giving it, or the equipment staff's giving it to him, and he's kind of giving it back. And like, that's the stuff to me where he's making game movements. And again, I'm not going to say he could play tonight based on what we saw, but to me, that looks like a player who is legitimately working his way back closer to being able to give it a go. That's the other part with all of this too, is I do genuinely believe that Gabe Landeskog is going to give it a try.
Totally.
At some point. What I actually think the question is at this point is it going to be able to stick? We all remember what happened with Peter Forsberg.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that people need to prepare for the reality of is that Gabe Landeskog will get back and he will play in a handful of games. But there is going to be a chance that he'll get to the end of, a week, a month, 5 games, 10 games, and say, I can't do it. The knee isn't holding up. The pain is too much. It's swelling after game. I don't know. I think that is a more likely scenario than him never coming back. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Based on what we've seen.
And our friend Peter should be calling in soon, so I just want to touch on a couple quick
things. He did text me. His call's running a little bit long, so he'll be a few minutes delayed. So we've got a little bit of time.
I'm trying to breeze through Landeskog, which is not an unserious
No, he
topic.
just texted me a couple minutes ago saying he needs 10 extra minutes, so we're good.
Perfect. Okay, then we don't have to go through this as quickly. But
do you want me to play Jared from yesterday? I've got that queued up if you'd like, just so we can hear, because I did think it was interesting the way he phrased stuff.
No, I do think it's worthwhile then. And he talks about Gerard Manson, so it's a little bit repetitive.
I don't have that in the clip. I just have the Landeskog stuff.
Perfect. Yep. Even better then. Just wanted to update on Gerard. He's still not good to go. He's still in the day-to-day. Yep. He skated in a regular jersey yesterday in red at morning skate today. I think that still points to things moving in a positive direction. Manson,
a true day-to-day
for Sam Girard. And then Manson didn't take the full practice yesterday, but regular contact jersey at morning skate. They're just managing his injury. So expect a Manson, a Girard soon, but not tonight.
Yep. I'm going to play this. This was from yesterday. Jared Bednar talking about, one, specifically the reports of the knee swelling, and then two, just a follow-up on overall update.
There was a report last week about Gabe Landeskog from a couple of insiders saying that he's unable to skate consecutive days because his knee starts to swell. Like, is there any truth to that, or
no?
What's happening there?
Yeah, no truth to that.
Given that he has skated a couple times with the team recently, is there any sort of forward progress there?
Well, there's forward progress for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but we don't have a new timeline or a firm timeline yet.
The part to me was no truth. The couple folks that we've heard, because I thought it was from one source. It sounds like it was maybe from a couple different ones. Mm-hmm. Look, and so Emily Kaplan was the first one, and Emily Kaplan, you and I have talked about it on the show, has been pretty spot on.
Yes, and
not only is she good, but she's been pretty spot on with the Gabe Landeskog stuff in particular. Right. In addition to Emily Kaplan just being, great at her job. Yeah. The Gabe Landeskog stuff in particular, she's been a little bit ahead of stuff. So I'm not going to say that Emily Kaplan got it wrong, but what I will say about this Gabe Landeskog situation is it's constantly changing and evolving. And Megan, there's stuff that I have been told over the last couple of years from very reliable sources that was true at one point and then wasn't true later. I don't doubt that Gabe was having this issue at some point.
100% in the recent past, too.
Right.
This report came out January 4th on an ESPN broadcast, not during an Avalanche game. That's early January, and so this report could be from something that was going on in December.
Right. And maybe even a little bit, maybe even November.
Totally.
Again, and I'd be willing to bet pretty good money that there was a level of truth to it at one point.
Definitely.
But something that emphatic from Jared Bednar, not just saying like, I haven't heard any reports like that, whatever, but saying, no, there's no truth to it. You have to go based on the information you have. And that to me says that even if it was an issue at one point, it's not continuing to be an issue, or it's not an issue that they are concerned about. Maybe it swells up that night when he goes to bed and it's a little bit uncomfortable. By the time he wakes up the next morning, it's fine. I don't know. But I just thought not only the denial of the report, but the way in which he pretty emphatically said no was the part to me that said, I know this Avs team and their PR, and they would not greenlight him to say no like that unless they were comfortable with that message.
Right. And Bednar's a seasoned pro. And so if he needed to dance around giving a more neutral or evasive answer, he could have. Yep. So to get that kind of definitive answer is really encouraging. And then to see what we're seeing at a morning skate today with Landeskog, all still very encouraging. To your point, though, not as if he's ready to return to a game tonight, but that this is a player making steps forward in the return to play plan, and it continues to move forward. Because I think every time we talk about this now, the last couple of weeks, it's been, this is the best I've seen, and it just gets better.
Correct. And that's the part where, again, I'm trying to not get carried away.
Totally.
Because we know how this can go. That said, I agree with what you just laid out. Every time that we've seen him at morning skate, I've said to myself, oh, that's the best I've seen him look. Okay, well, a week later, that's the best I've seen him look. And then today, here's how I'll put what I saw today. That was the hardest I've seen him push it.
Yeah.
That was the most, like I said earlier, what you would see a player do in a game. I'm not saying it was at game speed. I'm not saying he was taking contact, any of that. But in terms of, he wasn't out there like, okay, cut, stop on your right foot, turn around, backwards cut, pivot around. Like, that was what we saw him doing for a long time. And even a couple months ago, before he went away on the ice for a little bit, we saw him doing stuff where, he was kind of like taking in-play strides, right? And handling a puck and just really kind of testing the pressure. What we've seen in the not training camps, morning skates, hasn't felt like testing to me. It's felt like pushing, if that makes sense.
Yes. I'm laughing at the comment that said, Jesse said Gabe back next week.
Yeah, exactly. Put that, take that all the way to the bank.
Tweet it out. Hockey Twitter. Other kind of update included in all of this is Shillington, a player that we have not gotten to see much of this year, but another player that has been on the ice, still in red no contact jersey, but seeing him a little bit more on ice, very different from not on ice. So a player that Jared Bednar described as also probably being a ways off, but I think that's just the next step before we start thinking about him being added back into the lineup. And I don't know how to feel about it. I have mixed feelings. I
unfortunately for Oliver Shillington, I want to circle back to Gabe real fast after we talk about Shillington, but I do feel bad. This just hasn't gone well for Oliver Shillington. It would take a pretty remarkable second half for it to feel like it was a success, a successful stint with the Avalanche.
Where do you play him over someone?
Well, that's just my thing is he missed so much time in the 2 previous years, and Jared Bednar talked about that. This is a player that's missed a lot of hockey, who needs a lot of time in practice and systems and all of that. We saw how much he struggled earlier in the year. That, to me, truthfully, Megan, I see this as a guy that, if they can get him healthy and activated, will likely be passed through waivers, likely reassigned to the Eagles to see if he can build his game back up. I just don't know how, let's say he gets healthy next week, which I'm not even banking on, given the vagueness of the injury, given the amount of time that he has been away from the ice. I don't see how you draw this dude back into the lineup over anybody that's either currently playing or John Ludwig.
That's what I'm saying. John Ludwig, back from his conditioning stint with the Eagles, forward progress made there, a guy that I've liked, that I want to see more of, and they're struggling to find reasons to play him because Middleton and DeHaan are also fine options.
Right.
And that's where it gets hard for Shillington, who is a very different player, but in that bottom pair role, he's not stylistically what they look for that these other players are bringing right now.
And right now, tonight, John Ludwig will be the only healthy scratch. Once Sam Girard comes back, you're telling me, not you, I realized as I started to say that, I was like, well, this is going to sound like I'm accusing Megan, but like,
You heard it here first.
Yeah. But like, so what? You're telling me that he's going to jump 2 guys in the depth chart? No.
Who are playing fine. That's what's tough. It's nothing against Shillington, but it's like Miles Wood with Kelly and Kiviranta.
Right.
I don't know if Miles Wood can come back and beat out Kiviranta and Kelly, which sounds insane. But if he's building back up to game speed in his return, that's going to be hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially for a guy like Shillington, who, like Miles Wood, we've seen some really positive play from him in Colorado in the past, not this season, but at times for Oliver Shillington, it's been mostly not good, with a small flash of really positive steps right before he got injured. I just don't know how you justify putting him in the lineup ahead of guys who have played well, and a guy like John Ludwig, who has done every last thing you've asked of him.
Yeah. There's a couple more notes if we have time to get to.
Yep. Let me just real quick. There was a comment here asking about Gabe Landeskog coming back and if after 4 Nations is feasible. We talked about it on the show last week, Megan. My expectation at this point is playoffs. I just think that I don't think it makes any sense for you to try to roll him out there for the last 4 weeks of the season and put yourself in some cap constraints to do so, when we know that he's not going to be playing every night anyways. So can you get him back into the lineup in the first round of the playoffs and play him every other game? And then hopefully, if you can get that far, by the time you get to the Western Conference Final, again, assuming you can get that far, that's where you start having the conversation about, like, okay, can he play every night? I just don't think, with where we are at in the season, I don't think it makes good business sense to have him play before the start of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that hasn't changed. We talked about it recently, and the timeline changed from hoping to have clarity around 4 Nations to playoffs feels more realistic sightline for it.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to remind everyone that this segment is presented by 7 Brew Coffee, which is a one-of-a-kind drive-through and walk-up experience with a fast and friendly crew that is waiting to serve you, from rich, bold coffee to refreshing energy drinks, smoothies, teas, and milkshakes. 7 Brew has you covered with over 20,000 flavor combinations. There's a perfect drink for everyone. At 7 Brew, they believe in cultivating kindness with every cup, and their fully customizable menu is just the beginning. Before you hit the road, power up with 7 Brew in Firestone and experience the coffee revolution.
I haven't gone and gotten a milkshake yet, but it is on my list every weekend.
Sure, I believe they have them. I need to go confirm this. Since you told me that.
I know. I need to get back up there either way.
Do you see a conditioning stint for Landeskog happening ahead of that?
I had suggested that at one point, but a bunch of people told me that I was crazy for thinking that the
wild, wild west down there.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean,
I don't think it's that wild.
Right. Well, and I also think he would have, or Aaron Schneekloth would have, extremely clear and strict parameters for when and where to use him.
Totally. There's some tough guys, and the way they play now is so much more stable. It's so defensively sound. I just don't see it becoming a shootout gallery and a crazy game then physically with Landeskog in the lineup.
But here's one other thing that I will say. Now, obviously, if someone takes a run at him from behind or something like that, that's a little bit of a different story.
Totally.
But I also don't think, I do think there is enough sense in those players in that league to know, they all know who Gabe Landeskog is.
That's the kind of, that could be career ending.
Right.
For the player
from a reputation standpoint.
Yes,
correct.
Reputationally.
Yeah. Right. You took a deliberate swipe at a player who worked 3 years to get back. You took a deliberate swipe at him to try to get a call up. I'm with you. But here is the other thing that I will say is in support of him getting a conditioning stint. If you are worried about the amount of contact he's going to take in that it could ruin the knee, well, then he can't come back anyways. You know what I mean?
No, not in the playoffs. That's where there's concern. It's like there's not a lot of runway in the playoffs to experiment. And so a conditioning stint does feel like a good environment to see what a full length of gameplay looks like, even though it needs to be sheltered.
Mm-hmm.
How does he hold up after the game, the next 24 hours following?
Right.
I think they need that evaluation ahead of playoffs as realistically as they can get it.
Zach Parise, I remember, did a conditioning stint whenever he was with the Wild. He played like 4 games with the Iowa Wild, 3 or 4 games with the Iowa Wild. He's the last like big name player that I can think about, when he was at the height of his powers. Last big name player I can think of doing something like that. I don't know if the Avs would do it. I don't know if Gabe Landeskog would want to do it. Maybe he would. And maybe the Avs would be saying, no, we'd rather you not. And he says, yes, I think it's good for me to see how the knee reacts, the things that you just listed. I think conditioning stint makes sense. But again, if you are worried about, okay, well, someone down there is going to try to take a run or drop the gloves or something like that to try to get a call up, then no, it's not. If you're not worried about the knee and you're worried about someone doing something stupid other than the knee, then yeah, don't mess with it. I don't really think the AHL is quite like that anymore. Maybe the E.
Yeah, it's still a little messy, but now I think it's just special teams back and forth a lot of the time. And it's not quite as crazy. There's fluky stuff that still happens. Like even this last weekend, the captain of Calgary had to leave the game after a hard hit into the boards. Jacob McDonald. So it still happens, but I don't know. I don't know if it's quite the Wild West that people think it is too.
Carey Price, someone in the chat, is saying also went down for a conditioning stint with Laval a few years ago. Goalie, a little bit different, but it's a pretty big name dropping down to the AHL.
Yeah, no, there's definitely more. I'm blanking on them now, so I won't try to come up with them on the spot. But I wanted to get to 2 things unless Peter's here.
He's not here yet, but he
Cool.
did text me saying he'll be on shortly.
Perfect. Well, then we'll try to go through it quickly. A lot of concern about the power play. Well-placed concern. It's struggling right now, badly. But that top power play unit, probably the last guys off the ice yesterday's practice, and they looked gassed and they looked serious in what was an otherwise really jovial room. They were still cracking jokes back and forth. A few guys talking about vacation plans for 4 Nations, but not the top power play unit. They looked like someone just kicked their puppy. And so I think they're working very hard to get it back on track. There's obvious issues with it right now in overpassing. I feel like every time we assess why the power play has been bad, that always seems to be the problem. They just need to shoot more. And I think that's honestly what needs to happen to create offensively 5v5 too, especially coming out of being shut out in Winnipeg.
Jared Bednar talked about simplifying, getting back to the front of the net, or getting to the front of the net and making it difficult for another top goalie to see. But Megan, why are we going to talk about Igor Shesterkin when we have the one and only Peter Baugh from The Athletic joining the show? Great friend of the show, Peter.
Hello, it's good to see you guys.
Great to see you. Where'd you go for lunch?
We went to just the Thirsty Lion, I think it's called, just like right across the street. Yeah, it's a good, a nice, easy walk from the rink, and yeah, it was always good, and it's really good to be back in Denver.
Yeah, well, Denver is happy to have you back. But we want to talk about a little bit about the Rangers, a team you've been covering that has had a really weird season.
Very weird season
this year. I guess first, is it Igor Shesterkin going tonight?
It is indeed. Shesterkin versus Blackwood.
Shesterkin versus Blackwood should be another good goalie duel, but just kind of broad strokes, what has been your point of view? Like the roster for this Rangers team says that they should be one of the top teams in the East. They have been the last couple of years. What is happening with the Rangers this year?
Yeah, well, it certainly was a roster that I would describe as good, but maybe not perfect. Like there's holes in the roster at certain positions. And I think that the team started strong. Some of those holes were still kind of showing, maybe being masked by really good goaltending from Shesterkin. And then they kind of, Chris Drury dropped a bit of a bomb in the room by kind of sending out this trade memo in November telling the other GMs that he was open for business. He was willing to trade roster players, and he mentioned Jacob Trouba and Chris Kreider by name. And since then, for 6 or so weeks after, the Rangers just kind of entered this tailspin. Trouba eventually gets traded. Capo Caco gets traded. And they're finally starting to come out of that a little bit, but it's been a very tumultuous season just in terms of the vibes around the team. I think defensively, this team has not been very good a lot of the year. The last 6 or so games, or really since the holiday break, you've started to see their defense at 5-on-5 pick up.
Better, yeah.
Yeah, but it has been an imperfect season from an imperfect roster. And I guess the question is just like, can they get back to the point where they're winning hockey games a little more consistently?
So I saw that you reported Kreider and Chytil are set to return to the lineup tonight. And that second line, though, will stay intact with Zibanejad, Riley Smith, and Cooley. I guess I wanted to know what Laviolette has found in that line to keep it intact, even in getting some reinforcements back.
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest things that has coincided with the Rangers starting to play better is that Mika Zibanejad has picked up his game. He had a really tough start to the season. By the way, was very excited to see Gabe Landeskog this morning. Landeskog, they chatted it up well
Nice.
between, I guess, reps of Landeskog's drills. A couple of Swedes. But so Mika had a really kind of difficult, I would say, first half. And I think there was so much noise around the team. And I think he faced a lot of heat from the fan base in ways that, I mean, I think it was certainly like fair to criticize his play. He wasn't playing particularly well. But certainly I think maybe, I don't know about war on him. I can't speak for him, but I think that like, he's a player who he's very thoughtful. And I think sometimes he's mentioned he can think too much at times, like he can get in his own way. And I think what you've seen the last little bit is he's just playing hockey more. Like he's letting himself play. And Will Cooley's been a really good player for the Rangers this year. And then Riley Smith has been a little streaky, but okay. And so I think Laviolette, it appears, if they go with the same lines that they did yesterday in practice, just wants to keep kind of that group together and see what they have.
I want to ask you about what you were talking about with the trade memo and the players in particular that were on it. What in based on what what led to that? Because from the outside looking in, that seemed like such a shock, and especially Chris Kreider, and then obviously they do move on from Trouba, but like these were guys that felt like staples in the lineup. What led to that, and Chris Drury wanting to make such drastic changes?
Well, the team start this year 12-4-1. But even as they're playing really well, they're kind of getting big goaltending performances. There's some holes that are maybe getting masked by the fact that they're still winning hockey games. Then they're on this Western Canada road trip, and they get the final score, I think, was only 3-2, but they get absolutely dominated by Calgary, like completely outplayed. And then 2 nights later, in Edmonton blows the doors off them. And the trade memo came the next morning. So like, to me, what that says is like Drury kind of looked at like what his team had shown and kind of, it appears, came to the conclusion that like, this isn't a group that's good enough to do what we need to do to win the Stanley Cup. And so I think that like their record kind of was masking some holes in the roster, and Drury sensed that and tried to make changes.
Yeah.
Maybe the lack of, I don't know the right word, but like gracefulness with which he kind of implemented some of that, I don't think helped matters. Like if it could be correlation, could be causation, but like, I don't think the Rangers are as bad as they showed during their 4-15 stretch. Like they're not bad. I don't think they are as good as they were when they went 12-4-1, but I don't think they were 5-14 team. Like they looked really, really bad. And they've it seems stabilized a little bit recently, which is good for them. And I think leads to some really interesting questions going into the trade deadline, because clearly Drury wasn't afraid to try and shake things up when things were going relatively well, when they were 12-6-1. And now we'll see if he wants to try and shake it up again even more.
Because they're not that far out of the playoffs, right?
They're still within. The East is the mushy middle of the East is like pretty. There are a lot of teams that are. I think the Rangers are 500, and then there are some teams that have like 520, 530 winning percentages. Like
they're right in it.
Yeah, they're right in it. They've got to hop a few teams, but like they have the talent to make the playoffs for sure. I don't know if they have the talent to do much once they're there, but like they could make the playoffs.
Yeah.
As someone on the front lines, what was the aftermath of the Trouba trade? Trading a captain. Our frame of reference for what a captain means in the room is Gabriel Landeskog. So I'm curious what that means in New York.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the players, I think it was definitely a bit of a shock. And certainly the way it went down I mean, Trouba was pretty vocally unhappy with how it went down, where he had a 15, I might have been 15 team no trade list. Anaheim was on the no trade list, but the Rangers, he said, threatened to put him on waivers if he didn't accept the trade to Anaheim. And so he decided to accept the trade, which is and you can choose whether it's right or wrong, but it's certainly like a bit of a cold way of doing business. And it's what the Rangers did with Barclay Goodrow over the summer, where they put him on waivers so that San Jose could claim him, which was a team that was on his no trade list. So and sometimes you have to make cold decisions if you're a GM. So I'm not casting judgment one way or the other. But I think that the trade was definitely a shock. I don't know if, I asked Kreider at one point about how he felt about how the situation was handled. And I believe he said, like, I'm not paid for my opinions. I'm paid to play hockey. So I think you can probably read between the lines there a little bit of how the players felt about it. But there definitely was like kind of Trouba was a big voice in the room. Like Kreider and Zibanejad are leaders by example more than maybe like the super rah-rah vocal, like get the team together guys. I think you've started to see Vincent Trocheck probably work his way more into that, like kind of the vocal leader of the team. And I think he had that role in part before, but I think certainly with the absence of Trouba, different guys have had to step up in different ways, and he's probably been one of them.
Yeah. Good.
I was curious when you mentioned parts of the season that have been better, maybe have masked some holes in the lineup. And I have looked at the Avs lineup on a nightly basis, and they're just trying to survive half the time. So I'm curious, what you've pinpointed as some of the biggest holes that they might be looking to address going into the deadline.
The Rangers?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I'm not 100% sure they're going to go into the deadline looking to address immediate needs rather than moving on from some pieces to kind of set themselves up better going into next year or the year after. I think you can look at this roster and see, I mean, Artemi Panarin's an excellent player, but he's not Nathan McKinnon. And like they don't have the same level of top end talent in their forward group that other teams do. You look at their top six against like an Edmonton, a Colorado, a Florida Panthers, even like Toronto, like they're different levels of players, and
totally
the Rangers just aren't quite in that same stratosphere. They have the goaltender, and that can mask a lot of holes, but defensively at points this year, they've been really porous and have allowed a lot of chances against. I think their decor is it makes a little more sense now with Will Borgen there, who they got in the Capo Caco trade, who we covered the series, the Avs Kraken series a few years ago, where he was playing top 4 minutes. And he's by no means a perfect player, but he's a responsible defenseman. I don't know if there are any moves that this team can make at the deadline to suddenly turn themselves into a cup contender, which is why I wonder if they maybe look to shop players like Ryan Lindgren, like Will Borgen, if he doesn't extend with the team, maybe a Riley Smith. Like these are all guys who I would imagine playoff teams will have interest in. And I think that the Rangers have to like take a long, hard look at what they believe their chances are of going on a long run. And if they don't think it's possible with this group, then maybe they move on from some of those pieces and start looking towards next year.
We got Peter Baugh from The Athletic joining us right now. He covers the Rangers, the Islanders, the Devils, and kind of a little bit of everything. Former Avalanche reporter for The Athletic. We'll just got a couple more for you, Peter. I guess what has been your East Coast view of the Avs? Have you been able to follow them much at all? I know the time difference makes it tough.
Yeah.
But just what have you been able to kind of see from where you're at with this Avs group?
I still like to watch the Avs. I try to watch them as much as I can. Yeah, it's fun to check in and see how everyone's doing. And
totally.
Yeah, I think that like the goaltending trade certainly changed the complexion of the team for the better, I would say. And I think it looks like the team looks like it has more faith in Mackenzie Blackwood than it did in Georgiev. And I think that there's a team-wide effect there where the guys maybe play with a little more comfort in front of him, which allows them to play a little looser. And I think that there's a trickle-down effect from having a goalie that you trust. So I've noticed that. The D pairs, I would have to think at the deadline, that's something that you try to make an area, you try to make an upgrade. It's still, the third pair is a little dicey, and I could see, when you have Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar all producing at the rates that they're doing, you kind of owe it to the team to try and build a cup winner. So I would imagine they'll try to upgrade there. And then the big question is Landeskog, and I got there. I got to Ball Arena pretty early for skate today, and he was out early and he was moving pretty well. So I think like it'll be fascinating to see kind of how he just kind of keeps chipping away at this rehab and like where he ends up. And if and when he's able to come back into the lineup, what he looks like.
Yeah. I've only got one more for Peter. Do you have anything else, Megan?
Yeah, I wanted to get your take on Matt Rempe, a young player towing the line. From the outside, I just see the dangerous hits, but I guess I wanted to know, it seems like in this recent call-up, he's strung together some decent games. How is he being guided by the organization to round out his game, and kind of how is he received by the team, and what's your view of him?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like I would say somewhat consistent about my feelings on Rempe, which is I am with you that like a lot of the hits have been dangerous, and I thought that the 8-game suspension, frankly, was warranted because this is a guy who's been ejected now. I think it was like 4 times in his first 21 NHL games. And I think it's sometimes you can put those graphics up and they're kind of funny and it's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But I think that it's dangerous. Like there's players who get hurt from hits like this. So I thought the suspension was fair. I believe him when he talks about how he never has the intent to injure. Like, I don't think he is going out with malicious intent by any means.
Right.
And I think that with how the organization's guiding him, they don't necessarily give us a ton of view on exactly the conversations they're having, but I think they've sent him down to the AHL a few times this year to kind of give him opportunities in different situations and more minutes than he would get at the NHL level. It was also interesting to hear he talked about the other day we were talking to him and he mentioned that he and George Peros talked over the summer to kind of go over like what hits are good, what hits are not good. I thought that was fascinating. I didn't know that he had done that. So I think that like he's making an effort to try and like find the right side of the line to stay on. Like he said, he's very honest. He was like, I know that I can't get suspended again, or it's going to be 20 games. Like they're going to come down really hard on him. So I think he wants to play and he wants to like figure this out. And as for the team loves him. Like the players adore him. And I think we saw that in Colorado with Curtis McDermott.
Yes.
Like sometimes there are just guys who from the outside were like, why is this guy, what does he bring? And for whatever reason, the players respond well to him. And I think there's certainly a segment of the Rangers fan base, including, interestingly enough, former vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, who has tweeted about
yes, I've seen this on Twitter.
She's tweeted about Rempe a couple times, but that I think thinks that he his energy just completely changes the complexion of the Rangers. I don't know if I'd go that far. I think the Rangers have a really good record when he's in the lineup, but I don't know if them playing better is directly because of Matt Rempe. But clearly, like, the guys get something from having him in there, and I think he is a developing hockey player that has an interesting set of tools. Like, he can really skate. Like, he's a good skater for someone who's that big. He has to figure out a lot of things. Like, there's going to be defensive turnovers and mistakes in games. Like, the Devils had a shift against him where they had a lot of their top guys on the ice, and it didn't end well for the Rangers. And so you'll see some ups and downs, but he's certainly an interesting player and a very energetic personality. And one, he's fun to talk to. Like, he's an interesting guy, but I think that there's a lot of nuance to his situation that doesn't always get the time it needs. And I'm glad you asked about it.
Yeah. Well, the last one we've got for you, and this is by request in the chat, Peter. We need at least one hot food take New York edition. Now that you've been in New York, this is your second year there, right?
Yeah, it's second. I kind of moved in the middle of last season. So it was December of last year I moved out there. So it's been a little over a year now. Hot food take. I've been really into having raisins with Chex Mix lately, like mixing it all together, a little salty and sweet. I think one of the food takes that got people really mad on Twitter that I made is that I really don't understand the hype with like chicken wings. Like, I think they're they're just not. I would take a chicken tender over a chicken wing any day.
All right. Well, that I can get on board with 100%.
Yeah. I'm the same. This is a safe place.
Thank you.
We're very pro chicken tender here. Well, awesome. Well, Peter, it was great to see you this morning. We'll see you again tonight, but always just love chatting with you. Thank you so much for parking some time. I know game days are busy, especially when you're on the road. So really appreciate it, man.
Anytime. I always love coming on and talking some Avs, and it's great to see you guys.
We miss you.
You too. And we're gonna make better use of because Peter covers the Rangers, the Islanders, the Devils, all for The Athletic. Make sure you're following him. I agree with one of the comments that came through the chat earlier, Peter. You are one of the all-time best that we've had in this media room here in Colorado. So I encourage folks to continue supporting him and reading his work because I know that I do.
Yes.
And we will definitely be chatting with you more. Great chatting with you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. It was great to see you.
Good to see you.
See you tonight.
See you tonight. Yes. All right. Peter Baugh from The Athletic. Make sure you are following along.
Peter.
I love Peter. He's great. And we do have one here in the chat. Super chat. Let's hear it for the tendies. Both goalies and chicken. I can get on board with that. For the super chat. $2. Tendies. All kinds. Goalie, chicken. We're friendly here.
This is that's the dream.
Okay, right, there they are. We got the super chat lights going. We got it. You know what? We actually had someone come up to us in the locker room today, and they said, I was watching your show and it was so fun. There was dollar signs falling at one point. The lights were flashing and changing colors. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it because we work very hard to pull off these flashing lights.
Heck yeah, we do.
And, but no, it was just funny.
I just hope he stuck around to like see more context.
Yes. I hope he wasn't
in
like
the content.
Okay, what is this?
Oh, they're doing some weird stuff
Fun,
over
I guess.
at Gorilla.
Close, yeah, no. But big shout out to Peter Baugh. Always love chatting with him. Always great to see him. Just one of the friendlier people you'll meet around the rink.
He's awesome. He always has such a good pulse for the teams that he covers too. So that was great insight into what was a President's Trophy winning Eastern Conference final team, now 7th in the Metro, struggling a little bit. New York Rangers team that the Avs are going to see tonight.
Yeah.
I asked Cale Makar about the role of enforcers and Curtis McDermott a little bit, and he used the word comfort. That having a player like that in the lineup just provides a certain level of comfort. And he also, unprompted, took it to, and this current iteration of the Avs has guys like that. And he said Josh Manson, and then he forgot, but added Keaton Middleton a little bit later. And so I think it just reinforces when we're kind of wondering, why is Keaton Middleton sticking around? We like Ludwig. We want to see more of him. I do think that players like a Manson who miss some time pave way for a guy like Middleton to get opportunity just for those types of reasons. I think the other thing that Cale Makar, though, made mention of is it's important that this player still can add in some way.
Yeah.
And the role can't just be simply enforcer. And so I think that is where players like Manson and Middleton serve a role on the back end beyond just being the type of guy that provides a little bit of comfort being in the lineup.
And that was always, not to take a side swipe at Curtis McDermott for no reason, but that was always the part that just got me, Megan, was I understood the enforcer element and the comfort element and the intimidation factor. He couldn't play.
Right. It'd be 4 minutes a night. And so you're sacrificing, like you're then adding minutes to the tops of other people's ice time totals. And that's where the Manson and the Middleton makes so much sense.
Completely.
They're playing pretty complete games every night, especially Josh Manson.
I loved
tougher.
I loved what Peter said about how Rempe reached out to George Peros in the summer, who is the head of the Department of Player Safety. However you feel about the Department of Player Safety.
And violent gentleman.
And right. And yeah, what is he, CEO or co-founder
title.
Or something?
The title's like, oh,
yeah.
Should you be going to violent gentleman guy?
Right.
All right.
The player safety. But I do find that really interesting. And I think it's good that Matt Rempe, as Peter told us, told Peter, I know I have to be in check. I cannot get suspended again. I'm honestly even surprised the Rangers called him back up for that reason of, can we even trust you to be in the game? Because not only is he getting suspended, he's putting their team down for 5 minutes at a time. I just can't be doing it.
New York has had a great PK this year. I think it's 7th in the league.
Yep.
That is not to justify the shorthanded chances. But I think with Matt Rempe too, what surprised me that I feel bad about, because I don't watch lots of New York Rangers games, especially ones he specifically played in, is that there are tools to build around. I have been a little nervous in some of the shifts I've seen of Rempe that maybe the tools haven't jumped off the page at me, but that's encouraging to hear that there's more depth to this player beyond just the role of enforcer, because I think that's a necessity in today's game. I don't think there is much room if you're more or less just a human punching bag on the ice. I think that's bad for the psyche. I think you have to be more than that. And so it is important then to lean into these other tools in his game and help him to become more well-rounded, I think.
I agree 100%. You can't have the one-dimensional enforcer anymore.
No, Cale agreed. The game's just evolved to skill and speed, and I just think the role of enforcer as we once knew it is diminishing, but there's still certainly a purpose of having players like that make you feel a comfort, as he would say.
I'm with you.
All right, well, I think that's a pretty good overview of the game ahead.
I think that's it, yeah.
New York getting some reinforcements back in Kreider and Chytil just makes the challenge at hand a little harder for Colorado. This is not an easy homestand for them.
No.
They're going to have Edmonton. They're going to have Dallas, Minnesota, Winnipeg at the end of it. And so when you're looking to rack up points, there aren't really any easy points coming up. I wouldn't classify tonight as easy points either, but I think it adds to the significance of ensuring that you secure these points, because there's going to be tougher competition ahead. It's not going to be easy by any stretch, any of these.
Yeah, you're right. 4-1-1 are the Rangers in their last 6 games. So the Avs are going to have their work cut out for them tonight. Shesterkin in net. You want to get your homestand off on the right foot, not just collecting the points. Similar to what we talked about with the power play. Like, it's not just about scoring a goal. It's about using that 2 minutes to build energy for your team, put the puck on your team's stick, get some touches. Same thing for this game in the home, with this homestand. You really need to collect the 2 points for the sake of the 2 points,
right?
But you want to get the 5 games off to a good start.
Yeah.
You don't want to be chasing this homestand.
I think that's a great point. Play well in front of the home crowd, secure points early in it, because you don't know what is ahead for you. Actually, I don't even want to suggest anything like that, but
no, but it's the reality.
Yeah. They're still waiting for reinforcement to return to their lineup, because this is still not a complete lineup. And I think that's what makes it extra important for the Avs. New York has played well, like you just mentioned, in their last stretch, beating teams like Vegas and New Jersey. So this isn't going to be an easy one either, but I want them to play well and play proud in front of the home crowd.
We'll see what they got tonight.
Well, how would you like to save some money over the holidays? Valentine's Day?
Just any amount of time that you'd like.
Get through the holidays without having to make your mortgage payment. Well, if you go to trustedamerican.com to see how they can help you refinance your home, you just might not have to make any payments until February. Trusted American salary-based mortgage consultants want to help you get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payments. And right now, they'll cover the cost of your appraisal, which is a $650 value. Go to trustedamerican.com or scan the QR code on the screen to see how much money they can save you today.
I think that's all I got.
That's all I got for you guys today, too. We'll be back with some game coverage as the Avs take on the New York Rangers in the first of their 5-game homestand. I'll talk to you later. Gorilla Sports Off Ice.
Bye.
Bye.